Hi, loves. I had thought about waiting until my traditional episode release day of Monday, but it's a full moon. It's the 27th day of the month. Those of you who heard my interview with Michelle, the numerologist, you know that 27 is possibly my favorite number of all time. So let's just do this. Now, for my Patreon supporters, I'm excited to let you know I have a few treats for you this time around. As my interview with today's guest was wrapping up, I captured some extra conversation at the end about spirit animals and what Megan sees when she sees someone's aura. Also, today's guest had shared with me a dream, and so with her permission, I also offer that dream interpretation as a bonus. I invite you to go to patreon.com/Aprilific to see if there's anything there that appeals to you. Here we go. Thanks for joining me in Scheffy's Sandbox. I'm April Dawn Scheffler, and I invite you to play with me and my guest today, Megan McQ. Welcome, Megan.
Hey, how are you, April?
I'm doing good. Really excited about this conversation. It's going to be really cool.
Oh, gosh. Me too.
Well, in this first segment, we pop into a virtual coffee house before hitting the beach. And being the benevolent host that I am, your order's on me. So what order do you give the barista?
All right. I ask for a seltzer. Unless I'm required to have caffeine, but I'm fully caffeinated at this point, and I just love a seltzer.
Well, now that you have your refreshing beverage, let's dive right in. This segment I've renamed, I think I know you from somewhere. So sometimes living one's purpose and going through this human experience can look like playing small, but other times it can look like playing big. In your spotlight moments, Megan, have there been any claims to fame, times that our listeners may have seen you or your work?
I don't think so. If I'm understanding the question correctly, are we talking about like any time space continuum, like in a different lifetime? Was I different kind of soul and maybe had some type of fame? I don't think that's the case.
I love where that's going. Yes, let's definitely include that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I really don't think so. But I will say I have a friend who thinks that she was Cleopatra, and I think that's really fascinating. I'm like, wow, can you tell me more, and or can you send me a Sphinx cat? Because I think they're really cool. So, but I don't think I personally would have anything that people would know from a different lifetime. I get a lot, though, that I'm an old soul. Like I might meet somebody and 9 times out of 10, they're like, you look familiar. Or do I know you from somewhere? Or have we talked before? And I mean, even like I'll be driving and people will just wave at me. And I'm like, hi. And I wave back. It's not like they're upset that I'm in their lane or something. They're just, hey, I don't know. Maybe I just have like a recognizable face or something. But
So there's no one-fingered waves?
No. Yeah, the one-fingered salute, maybe every so often here or there on the toll roads, but no, I don't think so. I don't know. I think that's it. I don't think so. Or in this lifetime, I've kind of flown under the radar so far. I think I'm in this space of cocoon and going to emerge as the butterfly or the moth, as it were. So we'll see what all kind of shakes out in the next couple of years, but just been really trying to polish my craft or my skills and be as helpful to those about me as possible.
Well, guests are asked to choose a word or phrase that they would like to hear used more often in everyday conversation, something that doesn't get enough play or enough airtime. And the prior guest, which Michelle was the prior guest.
Yes, no, I do know her. I saw that you posted your podcast with her. And
Yes.
Since I thought I was next, I was like, I can't listen to it because then I'm going to be cheating for this segment. And so I opted not to listen, and I really want to learn from her. I love that she does numerology, and I cannot wait to listen to that podcast that you had with her. And I actually kind of wanted to hire her to be like, hey, what number would be good for this or that? I think she would just be so great. Anyway, what word did she choose? And I can't wait.
She chose spectacular.
Oh, that's fun. How spectacular. Okay. That is exciting. Okay. I think I can do that.
Yeah. So you are tasked to try to somehow fit that into our conversation today.
All
You
right.
also get to choose a word for the next guest to dance with. And it could be a peculiar word that you find funny or that resonates with you. So what are you laying down for them to pick up?
All right. I gave this some thought, and my word is joy or joyful. Some joy related. And my justification is that I just feel that we as a society could be more joyful, and that would just bring such a high resonance, just a higher vibration of living. And something that I've been asking myself recently is, how can I bring even just 1% more joy into my day? 5% more joy into my day. How could I make this day more joyful? So one way to do that is just use the word. Good luck to the next person.
All right, well, let's get started with how you and I crossed paths. So I had joined the January Soul Hypnosis workshop where I wanted to be just a client. And so for the 8 sessions in the month of January, I was paired up with someone different each time and was hypnotized. And the very first pairing, that first class, I got paired up with you, Miss Megan.
I know, I remember that. I remember because it was the first time you had ever been hypnotized. Is that correct?
So it was the first time I had done a one-on-one session. So I had done some group sessions before that were pretty interesting. But yeah, this was the first time that I was on a one-on-one guided hypnosis session. So yeah, so I had come to the session with my own expectations as to what that would look like or possibly be. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I brought some pretty high expectations. I wanted to see, butterflies and experience past lifetimes and just be flooded with joy. But the thing is when I sat down, there were kids outside playing basketball, and I just kept hearing the ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk of the basketball. And like the dogs kept coming in, and I could hear the click clack of their nails against the floor. And I just felt so highly strung. It was like, this is not, I don't think it's going to work. And maybe I'm not the only one, but traditionally, I think I have brought the baggage to situations and experiences where I'm going to be the one person that it's not going to work for, right? I'm going to be that person that won't be able to be hypnotized, or that there's just something wrong with me or dysfunctional that it's just not going to work. And so I had all of these worries and hopes at the same time, just kind of jumbled around. One of the cool things about this being a workshop is there is that understanding whenever we do those breakout rooms in Zoom, that you are able as a practitioner to call in the facilitator, Courtney, from the main room, and she can pop in and give you some helpful advice if things kind of have come across a hiccup of some sort. And you actually had to take advantage of that with me. Can you tell the listeners what happened?
I know. I thought that was so fascinating. So I just remember when we were, partnered up, and it was just very clear, you're new to hypnosis, and you did say that you had some, is it all right if I kind of talk about what we
Yeah, I'm completely free. You can talk about anything. And if by chance we say something that I'm like, maybe I don't want that to be, known, then I can just go back and edit it out. But we're good.
Okay, perfect. Because when we first started working together, you had talked about maybe, a troubled childhood, or just that there was a lot of baggage. And I found that so fascinating, the words that you used. You even used the word block. I'm not sure if you remember that or not, but I believe you used the word block. Go back, I would listen to it. And now, as you know now, I can see energy and I can hear it. And as we started doing the induction to the hypnosis, I saw a very large square go in between you and I. It was like a kind of a force field in front of your body, and it was a literal block to hypnosis. And all the sounds were just becoming agitating, and it was very clear we weren't comfortable going anywhere. And as a facilitator, as I continue to learn hypnosis and any type of modality, I am simply a conduit for your own truth. I believe in the inherent capacity of any client to heal themselves. I am simply a facilitator of what is present for them. And so what we ended up doing is we took a break. You're like, I need some headphones. And, you went over to get some headphones, and I just called in Courtney. I was like, why not? Why not take advantage of Courtney, who's done over 1,000 successful hypnosis sessions. And so I just brought her in and just said, hey, we're just having some trouble. I didn't say addressing this block that I see, but we're having some trouble getting through the induction. And, and Courtney just kind of gave some helpful suggestions and left. And then throughout the rest of the session, literally all we did was address the block. And what I believe is, once we become willing to acknowledge what is present, allowing it to be present just as it is, it will change. It will evaporate, or something happens. It will just change. That's the nature. The only thing constant is change, right? Mm-hmm. So by acknowledging what is present, we can start to heal or grow or let it change. And so throughout the session, I know it was hard. I believe it was hard. I obviously am not in your shoes, but there was a lot of baggage that we might not be able to put words to, but that block started breaking up. The edges started getting a little fuzzy, and almost looked like the cracking of a window shell. It started kind of cracking, and I knew it was starting to go, but it was going to be a rough few days for you. And so that's why after our session, I checked in with you a few times, I think, but at least twice, or I think 2 or 3 times over that next week, just checking in on you. Just, hey, how is it going? Because in my experience, when I'm looking at big things to heal over, there can be some residuals about it. So that's what I remember from our session together and how we first met. I know you were a little tentative about continuing forward with the rest of the class, but I really felt that the universe put us together because I am very familiar and comfortable working with big blocks, capital B's, and helping people break through those in their own authentic way. I'm just here to hold the space ultimately. But you were ready. And I hope, you'll have to tell me what the rest of your month looked like for you working with other people. But I think maybe you became a little, I don't want to say receptive to receiving hypnosis, but I do think, at least looking at you now, there's definitely no block. And I think it's just incredible.
I have a certain amount of notoriety now. That was the only time that Courtney's been called into a session. Which I totally am okay with that, because for one thing, it made her feel helpful for once. She's in that main room by herself, and so she actually got to be useful and provide some helpful tips. I got the headphones, tried to do a reset, to try to block it, because I have experienced a history of misophonia, where certain I'm very sensitive to sounds, and certain patterns of sounds can just drive me up the wall. And so I was trying to do a reset and get in this spiritual place where it wouldn't bother me. And so anyway, I later on with the other sessions, I ended up trying a different tact. I went into a different room of the house altogether, away from the street. So, the kids playing basketball in the cul-de-sac out up front they wouldn't have to worry about the crazy woman storming out of the house. I'm trying to be spiritual. They were a close call and they didn't even know it. I was going to stab that basketball.
I think that's sorry. I just think it's so fascinating, right? Because that's exactly what comes up for me. Generally, my blocks to freedom, right? Or allowance or acceptance is wanting to control my circumstances so that way they are acceptable to me, whatever that happens to be. I'm also very sensitive to sound as well. And those types of sounds just really get to me, they get under my skin. And the more I notice, I'm agitated by something outside of my control, and I notice how much I'm trying to control it, that's where I can start getting that freedom. And I love that you were sitting with it. Literally, you were just allowing the dog, I was hearing it too, right? And I could see it was just like almost like your eye almost wanted to start twitching, one of those. And I relate to that, but it's once you start realizing I'm actually powerless over my environment in this case, and all I have to do is sit in awareness of my annoyance. And that's what we do to change. And I think it's amazing that you were embracing that. And then it became, okay, I would like to take some action to just kind of give myself a little bit more of a bubble. And it was perfect. It was like, okay, well, what can I change? What on my side of the street can I change? And how can I make my house just a little bit cleaner so I don't have to deal with the basketball or what have you? Maybe put the dog outside of the room or what have you. And that was just really impressive to me, because once we start noticing that difference between what is happening and my reaction to what is happening, that difference is the amount that we have to accept. That's where our acceptance is. And that acceptance leads us to freedom. So I just thought that was really powerful what you were doing just in that hour.
Like you said, I do so appreciate the fact that we were paired together, because I think it was perfect, because I'm not quite sure that anyone else would have messaged me throughout the week to touch base. But you did. A lot of times I think we have, meetups with people, times where we connect, and then we kind of forget about them throughout the rest of the week. That was our time, and now we're separate until next time. But yeah, you just brought that to a whole new level. You asked for my phone number, and then you texted me throughout the week. And yeah, I didn't want to go back. I did not want to go back, because as opposed to the butterflies and the angels and the whatever I was hoping to feel, when later on I came to find out from some other classmates who have been doing this for a while, the first emotions that someone has to deal with in the healing process are grief and anger. And I just remember I took a screenshot of that, or I tagged you, and I'm like, did you see this, Megan? Because that's exactly what I dealt with in that first session. And you were so perfect for this, because you let me sit with the feelings of anger and grief. I think we did name those two things. And to give listeners a little bit more of an idea as to what was happening, from what I recall, I do need to go back and listen to it again, but at first it was just feelings. I was feeling anger, probably because of the sounds and my inability to control, because yes, I'm trying to release the need for control over everything. So I was just sitting there with that. And then what happened, you were taking me through some guided meditation. And what happened is that my anger did take symbolic form. Maybe you'd be able to put this into words better. So if you remember the session, let me know, because I just know that the whole idea of you bringing up the idea of a tea house. Can you start from there?
Right, sure. So what ended up happening in your session in particular, and what I did, and I felt comfortable doing it just based on having facilitated hundreds of meditation sessions with people over the past 9 years or so, I reverted back to doing an ancient meditation technique called Yoga Nidra. And what that technique entails is body sensing and awareness. And at some point, and that's what we did. If you remember, I was just, hey, just pay attention to what's going on in your body. What sensations are present in your body. And this is, a very powerful technique. And so at some point, and the way the modality works is, and why I reverted to it, is it completely honors the client's point of view. And it really removes me altogether, which is hypnosis as well. But I just felt more comfortable in this setting to go to that modality. While on the highway with you, we kind of just took a turn, it was just like, okay, let's take this exit and stay on the highway. But let's go this way because I'm comfortable navigating those lanes, as it were, or that direction. And so at some point, this block or this baggage became separate to you. And it was almost like a different entity, if I may use that word, and a different consciousness, a different part of you. And you became conscious of the separation of self being maybe your highest or most authentic, purest love space, if you will. And so what I did was I invited you into your own tea house. And this is just part of Yoga Nidra. This is one of the techniques. This is one of those tools within the Yoga Nidra family, or, school of thought. And so I just asked you, hey, where's your tea house? What does your tea house look like? Can you invite this entity to your tea house? And can you have a conversation with it? Every single time, every step of the way was all answers are perfectly acceptable. Yes, no, maybe, and I don't know. All 4 of these responses are always perfect because they are perfect for you and they are based in your own truth. I am not here to know your truth. I'm just here to help facilitate your own session. And so you said yes to all these questions. The one thing that's eluding me at the moment is what form the anger took. Do you remember?
I do. It was so fascinating. It was kind of like a genie in a way, because it looked like Mr. Clean.
Hi, my name is Natalie Rosenau, and I will be doing season 2 episode...
Who knows?
Who knows? I come out at night without being called. I get lost in the day without getting stolen. What am I? Mommy, any guesses?
Comes out at night.
Without being called.
Stars are out at night without being called. But what's the other part?
I get lost. I get lost in the day without being stolen.
Stars.
Yes.
And look at me, I'm so clever.
Oh yes, you are so clever. And let's do another one because you did it. You did the other one. Okay. So, Kate's mother has three kids: Fire, Crackle, and
Pop?
No.
What?
Listen to it. I'm scared to tell you it.
She has 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And their names are Fire, Crackle, and...
What? Kate's mother...
Oh, gosh! Kate. That's right. Kate would be the 3rd one.
Because Kate...
Yes.
Mother.
I get it. Very good. All right. Is that it for Nonsense with Natalie?
I'm sorry I have to let you go with all that nonsense. Because my nonsense is good and their nonsense is weird. Bye!
Yeah, so Anger shows up as a red Mr. Clean, just the top half, with his muscled arms and kind of like just a genie floating there. You had me extend the invitation for him to have tea with me, and I'm like, I'll try. So I kind of, in my mind, I posed the question to him, and he surprised me by saying yes, he would stay for tea. And so, he has his little bitty teacup and his big muscled arms. And okay, so you asked me, so what is he doing? So I look at him and I told you, he's just flexing his muscles. And so I thought that was just really, really funny in a way. And then I think you had me ask him what he was feeling or if there was something he wanted to say. And I just remember, I think that he said that he was scared. So it was this opposing, these opposites. He's so strong, but at the same time, he was saying that he was scared, and he really didn't have a whole lot to share or to say. I just felt like he wanted to be acknowledged. And so that's what we did. That's what we did that first session. I was very thankful for you following up because, I had this self-judgment that I had put on the experience that I had somehow failed, that it didn't work, that I wasn't able to been hypnotized, and then I wasn't experiencing all these cool things that I had heard other people experience during a hypnosis session. And so, I felt like I failed, and I didn't want to make myself vulnerable like that again. Because in a way, hypnosis, you don't know what it is that the universe needs to bring to your attention that day. And so there's a sense of excitement, but yes, that there's also this sense of vulnerability. So just to show up again and maybe have another, in air quotes, disastrous session where I'm sitting with anger and other uncomfortable emotions like grief that, I felt like I've dealt with so often. I'm done. I'm ready to be done with it. That's why I wanted to clear that out and experience something new. Because by default, anger has been my mode of operandi or whatever you call it.
Oh, I know. And you know what I just loved about that session was that you were willing. You were willing to let the anger be present and interact with it on a authentic level. I think a lot of times by acting as the anger in our lives, just as we move around the day and hit that red light, hit that red light, then your phone goes off 10 times and you are the anger instead of observing the anger just as it is. This technique allows us to heal the anger altogether. So whatever wasn't fully processed at the time, I don't know what age that anger was present. I just know that you were really sitting with a lot of it, almost waves and waves and waves of it. And your willingness allowed it to be heard, right? In the tea house, you heard it. Thank you. I believe that's generally what we do is say, you can say thank you, or what, is there anything you'd like to say back to the anger before it moves on its way? And I love that your genie was red. That usually signifies the ages 0 to 7. Red is usually a color of the root chakra, and that is ages, prenatal to 7, childhood, early childhood. And so, but also seeing red, anger, right? And I just thought it was just so fascinating that you were willing. And in terms of bringing in Courtney, if I could say this, I think more people should use her, right? Because at the end of the day, she has 1,000 plus experiences hypnotizing people with several modalities. I've only done at this point, you were my maybe 10th or 11th hypnosis client ever. And why wouldn't I yield to someone with more experience than myself. At the end of the day, if I'm trying to give you, the client, the best experience possible, I want to use every single tool in my toolkit to make that happen. And far be it from me to be an authority after 11 hours. Right. I think even there's a saying where 10,000 hours makes you an expert at something. 10,000 hours. That's conscious hours. And 11 hours in, I'm not even 1% to that 10,000 hours. So I would think more people would want to take advantage of what Courtney had to offer. And during your session, there was a perfect opportunity to bring me in, and not bring me in, bring her in to help us. So how great is that?
She also came up when I was thinking about the anger. She has said that before her spiritual hypnosis journey started, that she was a very angry person. And it's a little hard to believe, right?
I know. She is one of the happiest, most joyful people. And honestly, the reason why I ended up in the October meditation class, and then the January one, in October and September, I had just been going through a lot of personal difficulty, and I really wanted to be more joyful. I keep using my own word, I promise. I'll bring in Michelle's word, but I wanted to be more happy ultimately. And Courtney has always been one of the most happy people I know. And so I signed up for the class just to be around her. I just think people who are happy begets more happiness. And so that's why I ended up in the class in October, truly, just because she's so happy. What? And it is hard to believe that she came from such an angry place, but I do trust that that was her life experience. I don't think she would ever mislead us,
This past week, I actually heard her use like the word bully. Like she had thought at one point that maybe someone had told her that she was a bully or whatever. And she had said several times that she had been a very angry person. And, but I was like, wow, if she were angry, and I totally believe what, she's saying this is true. But this person I'm seeing in front of me, like consistently, is always seeing the best in people. She's always smiling. She's exudes love. Like there's hope for me. I just keep going back, but I appreciate you being willing to reach out for her help and to encourage, reach out with simple texts several times the following week. And even after that, to check in, see how I was doing, and to be a little cheerleader. I know, like I said, I felt like it was a failure afterwards, but you were like, you did such great work. That was really advanced stuff. And
it was, though. I don't want you to think that I was being disingenuous or unauthentic there. It was. When I started my own yoga nidra journey and started meditating regularly, it took me well over 6 months to even really feel any sensations in my body without assistance from the practitioner. And in addition, probably another 2 months, so probably 8 months before I ever could take a emotion that strong. Anger being a very difficult emotion to feel, and be in a space of allowance to feel it at all. And especially in a session where that's pure emotion. That is pure. It's very intense. And you were feeling it. If I were to have asked you on the 10 scale, what was it? You probably would have said 100, right? It was a lot. Like when I say waves and waves of it, I could see it. It was waves and waves. Like that wall, that block, it was big. It was thick. And so it took me probably 8 months to have my first tea house experience where I could bring in anger and grief and sadness and start to identify and bring these into a tea house at all. Probably took me a couple of years to notice that my tea house could change depending on the circumstances. It really was quite advanced. Seeing as I've done hundreds of hours of these, I really feel I was so fortunate and blessed to actually get to witness that amount of willingness to heal. And I do feel that because it was a block It was a literal block. It was your block to hypnosis. And I'm so excited to see where the journey takes you. So hopefully you get to see a butterfly or other past lives before too long, if not already.
I've had some great experiences. Great being a judgment for sure that we put on things, but I've had things that were very impressive, favorable, ones that I would prefer. And then I've had some others that were a little bit more subtle, not as, just very subtle. And I think we need that too. Like sometimes healing, if it takes place all at once, which I've wanted to happen before. I've gone to an energy worker, a body worker, and she was like, yeah, I think that's all that, I'm getting the information that your body, it's done for today. That's all I want. And I'm like, but I want it to be like complete. I want to be like healed. I want it to be taken care of all in one session. I want to get my money's worth, And she was like, well, your mind, you have a mental mind. And then she's like, I like to think of it as your body having its own mind. And it's telling me that it can't, it's done for today. It can't handle. It can be traumatic, too much healing happening at one time sometimes. And so I was disappointed. I mean, I get it, logic, what she was saying, but at the same time, I just wanted it to be done.
Right. And it's so interesting because you're healing over your lifetime of experiences, known and unknown, conscious and unconscious. I love the phrase body mind. That is exactly the consciousness that we work with Yoga Nidra. You're working with the body mind, the sensations of the body. And that's why I will ask you questions like, does this feel complete for today? Because it's ultimately your decision when it's time to come back. It's not really up to me. And that's also why I like Yoga Nidra or the other modalities I've experienced with. I really love placing healing in the hands of the client. Because again, I believe inherently that you know how to heal yourself better than I ever could. So why would I interfere with that process?
I think it's so cool that you mentioned that the color red has that symbolism or that correlation between the youngest years, because whenever I have gone back with, help or, to just kind of peel back layers and see when things first started, it was very young, that sense of, I don't know, helplessness in a way, of being unprotected, not being secure, and tapping into a very offensive posture to counteract that. I feel like that happened very early. And so around 5 is when in a previous session, I had walked back, peeled back. When did I first feel insecure? Like I did not have a sense of home, or I was unprotected. And so, yeah, it goes back to that era. So I think that's really cool that you were able to, pinpoint the color correlation even. Colors are so cool.
They are. Colors are very cool. I think it's so important that, I'm not really projecting my own beliefs on your session. It's really kind of like a sixth sense that I got as you told it back just now. It was, and this is interesting. I was smelling it. I was smelling the genie, and it just smelled like a root chakra smells to me. How weird is that? But that's how I knew, that's why the genie, or that's why I believe the genie was red in this particular case. And it doesn't really matter what I think. At the end of the day, this is just a thought that I am having, happy to share with you because we're just chatting about this session. But ultimately, my beliefs on anything, including colors, are irrelevant if you have a different one. Yours would always supersede mine. Sometimes I feel that there are practitioners out there that know better than, and I find that to be a very unhealthy space for a healer and client to be in. I really believe in modalities that emphasize, again, the inherent ability of the client.
I think that's beautiful, and I appreciate your stance on that, because I hold a similar viewpoint when it comes to dream interpretation. And a lot of the people that I look up to most, they are ones who don't hold some type of dream symbol book as the Bible to tell you what meaning to give to that symbol. It's all about, what does color red mean to you? What does, whenever there was a dream recently that someone told me about a tomato, like, okay, what does the tomato mean to you? I don't like tomatoes, but she loves them. And she had some in her refrigerator. And so it has like a completely different meaning to her than it would to me. And so I love that. And I've talked about how where I base my technique off of Robert A. Johnson's book, Inner Work. And it's all about giving that power. It was never the practitioners to begin with. It's all about giving you as the dreamer the power to interpret your own dreams, because that's where a lot of the magic happens. Now, it's really cool though, someone who gives their viewpoint from the outside, it can really resonate and be like, yes, like, wow, it just adds an extra layer of confirmation, like an aha, wow, I didn't think about that, but it feels true. And so I appreciate your insights. So let's talk about you, Megan. What first prompted you or propelled you onto, I guess, what we like to call your path, your spiritual journey? What was your awakening?
Right. I know. It's so fascinating, because I think I'm still in the middle of it, right? Always a work in progress, and not about the destination. The journey is kind of that destination. But I went through a bunch of death by 1,000 cuts, across the years of my adolescence and early adulthood, and kind of ended up in a really dark place. I was on psychiatric medication. I had a lot of diagnoses, social anxiety, bipolar disorder with major depression. I ended up at, a psychiatric care facility in Johns Hopkins Hospital for diagnosis, for mental illness and diagnosis. And I met with a world-renowned physician who said, yeah, you definitely have a atypical bipolar disorder, where you're just basically depressed, but you don't respond to medication, and you might need to do deep brain stimulation, and hey, why don't you try meditation and be a part of an NIH study, National Institutes of Health study. And I couldn't leave my house. I was drinking a lot, just to kind of try to cope with just day-to-day life. I couldn't really leave my house or hold down a job. I was in a really dark place for a lot of time. And eventually, it really just came down to, I don't want to live like this anymore. And ultimately what I thought was, I just don't want to live. And I had a lot of suicidal ideation and how I wanted to off myself, and how to do it without hurting my mom, because I just love her so much. And so what ended up happening was, I had met this woman who did yoga nidra. And I remember when I saw her that she had a glow to her. And I wasn't very conscious to the fact that I could perceive energy, because it had been so many years of disowning that and disowning my own truth, and just, I guess nobody sees this, so I guess let's just pretend it's not happening, kind of thing. And so I started getting meditation with her. I started going to see her twice a week, every week. And within a period of months, my entire life changed. And it went from, I just wanted to die, to the magic of the universe, and was able to stop drinking altogether and go off all of the medication very slowly and with doctor supervision. And that was all in, 2012. And over that year and a half or so. And from there, from that meditation jump off point, I got to a very, I don't want to say sick place with it, but I became so acutely aware of my surroundings and the energies of everybody around me that I could hear their spirits, their loved ones. I became a medium for a period of time. And I could walk up to strangers and just say, hey, your loved one is here. Just at the grocery store, the dentist office. My dentist office loves me now. And I would just be like, hey, this person's with you today. And there were a lot of tears out in public, and people kept calling me like Teresa Caputo, like the Long Island medium, and I really was quite clear. I was a very, very clear beacon for a period of time in that realm. And I just was floating around with like my head detached from my body. Just let me help the world and not be fully self-supporting or take care of myself, and see all my problems are away because I want to live again. And that became sick too. And that's where I started going into a prolonged period of, it's very important for me to be grounded and to honor the process of others around me. And that's why I'm in such a deep place of the client is more important than me. And I started having clients that would come in repeatedly, every year, every 6 months, and they would come and they'd ask for, what are my spirit guides telling me? What are my loved ones telling me? And it would be the same message. And I would just tell them, why are you paying me for this? I was very confused. Don't pay me. You need to go read this book. And I've told you that 3 times now, or you need to go get that surgery. And I've told you that 3 times now. And not that I was more knowledgeable, but that I noticed some of my clients were in the same pattern. I don't want to say rut. Nobody's in a rut, but they were in the same pattern. I just felt like I wasn't helpful in the way that I wanted to be helpful. And I felt maybe it's because I need to do more work on me. So I think it was 2017 where I began a lengthy process of the Eden Energy Medicine Practitioner Program. And it is a 4-year program. And I've been through 2 years and going through my certification process now and my board certification to be a I don't want to say healer, but just a facilitator of a client's energies. And we study a lot of different energy systems, like the chakras, the aura, the Chinese meridians, which is what acupuncture is based off of. A lot of 9 different energy systems, how these interplay with each other, how to test the client to see what their energy patterns are doing, and how to help the client with homework or what have you correct and make the best possible, make spectacular their own energy systems. And so ultimately, that's where I've been the past couple years. And I had along the pathway kind of come into contact with Courtney, and I've learned other modalities just on the side, just for, I don't want to say for fun, but just for my own learning. Just, I like to embrace learning. Why not? And so that kind of led me to meet you. Really, I don't know if I would consider myself a hypnotherapist, or that I want to take on that as an undertaking. I do a lot of meditation. I'm really into modalities, like I said, and something that I'm doing right now is interviewing other practitioners about what their modalities are, how they developed them, and what they do for others. The role of the client versus practitioner, and their own ethics surrounding the modality itself. And I just find that so fascinating when healers heal themselves and help others heal themselves.
It's just really cool when things can come together and work so beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And you know what I also love about, healers kind of owning themselves is that somebody isn't everything for everyone. you know, like this is kind of where I'm at. You know, I don't think I'm the best hypnotherapist in the world or anything like that, but I do feel like I have the ability to conduct yoga nidra sessions and hold the space for someone really undergoing a powerful and profound healing and altering process. So yes, I'm very comfortable doing that. And of course, growing my toolkit and growing my own capabilities is wonderful. But at a certain point, there have been clients in my past where I really refer them to other practitioners. I had a client a couple of years ago come to me, and it was very clear he really needed more frequent hands-on sessions that I wasn't currently doing. I want to say actually early on in the second year of my certification program. And it was clear that just where he was at in his own life path and journey, he needed a more advanced practitioner than I could be. And so he lived in California. So I literally recommended somebody more advanced than me because he needed it. And at the end of the day, I would rather someone get into the correct hands than, you know, suffer my capabilities, you know, if that's not what's being called for. And so I hope to always embrace and embody a spirit of humbleness, like, you know, humility, to know where my limits are and not violate or cross those for my clients.
So the Eden Energy program being 4 years long, that's a considerable investment of time, whereas a lot of other things promise a whole lot with a much shorter, some certifications you can get in a weekend or via an online workshop. So in order for you to have signed up for this 4-year commitment with this goal in mind, how did you first get turned on to Eden Energy Medicine? And did you have just like a come into Jesus moment where you like totally experienced what Eden Energy is all about and wanted that for others?
Right, sure. So what ended up happening was I had a client, and I had given her a reading, and we were talking about certain things. She had a very rare medical diagnosis, and she was just asking me, hey, what are my guides telling me? What is going on here? And what I do is during her session, I kind of gave her some thoughts on it. Just trying to keep very vague here. I think it's kind of important. While she would never find out, nobody would know that I'm talking about her, I just feel it's so necessary to be as vague as possible to respect her, since I haven't chatted with her about this podcast. But she started saying, oh, I've gotten that advice from my other healer, is how she referred to her other healer. I mentioned, I think you should do something around the lines of this physically with your body. This is kind of the sense I'm getting from your guides. They're saying to do this particular exercise. And she said, oh, my healer told me that. And I heard in my ear from my guides ask her about that healer. So of course I finished our session, made sure to get through everything. And, you know, as she was preparing to leave, this was before, you know, COVID, so we were in person, she said, I just asked her, I just said, hey, you know how you mentioned that healer and that exercise, could I have their number? Are they local? What are they about? And so then I went to go see her, and within 3 or 4 sessions, it was clear that this was a modality that I truly believed in. Whatever was happening in my session, I knew fundamentally it was tailored to my unique needs and that it would be helpful. And she just told me, I got my certification. I'm in the 4th year of this, program. The first class is starting in 2 months in this area. Why don't you go? And I was like, well, I don't know. That's a pretty huge undertaking. You know, like you said, it's 4 years. That's a long time. But after 2 years, you're certified. And once you pass the board, of course, but you're certified after 2, and then you become more advanced, and I don't want to say optional, but at that point, you're at least certified and know all of the initial protocols and everything. So that's how I knew. It was really almost like I think you maybe have used this, where it was kind of like I was in a river and it was like only one stone is showing up in front of me, or one leap pad is showing up in front of me at a time. And it's just up to me to take the next right action. And I really felt that this was necessary, because I agree that there are certain modalities that you can get a certification in 8 hours. And while that doesn't diminish the powerfulness of those modalities, I really felt that the examination of ethics is very important in the Eden Energy Medicine program, where we are reading textbooks, like almost like medical textbooks about how to be ethical. And I find that to be essential. And when I come across, not that I come across a lot of them, but when I come across healers that might not have the belief of the client, I know for myself that that isn't correct. And I've seen people work with practitioners for years and get to a very disempowered state. And they're not even aware that they've given up their own sense of power to this healer, which I don't mean to put in quotations, because I believe fundamentally all of us are healers, right? Anybody. But if we're taking it to a place where we're taking power away from someone else, I personally I just don't jive with that. And that's why one thing I feel very strongly about is helping other clients who are seeking these modalities know that the whole point of going into this realm and going to healers is so that way we don't have the learned helplessness that you talked about. It's to move beyond a space of learned helplessness and really be able to empower ourselves to heal ourselves.
I love that. In fact, I've realized that the kind of person that I get drawn to are people who consistently point you back to yourself. And those are the kind of people I enjoy having in my circle. I actually asked, the Akashic Records about something, and it brought up Courtney as an example of how it is to be in this world where she does not create like a need for herself in other people. So like when I entitled that entry, it was, selling ice to an Eskimo. So you're not trying to, because we're told in this very commercialized place that we need to instill in others like an addiction of some sort, that they somehow need us, or whatever the product is that we're trying to offer, that they need us, and try to manufacture this need where there really wasn't before. Oh, wow, I didn't realize I needed you so badly, or that this. And that instead, anytime we can point people back to themselves and empower people, that's not going to minimize our gifts and what we can contribute to others in their healing process. It just takes us all on the path forward together, where we're not, like I said, trying to sell ourselves.
I completely agree. I really could not have said that better myself. And I agree. That's what I really love about Courtney too, is that she really is about, honestly, her whole hypnosis class is called the Soul Empowering Hypnosis class, right? Like that fundamentally aligns with what I believe. And that is one of the reasons why I feel I was always drawn to her. And it's going to be so exciting to see where she takes this soul empowering workshop. And I'm so excited. It's going to be quite a spectacle, a spectacular spectacle. How about that, Michelle?
So I had reached out to her for permission to air one of my hypnosis sessions as a client. I wanted to share it with listeners, and I wanted to clear it with her first as to if I could include some of I didn't know if she would let me include any of the intro or the deepener or anything like that, because maybe it would be copyrighted, or something like that, trademarked. I was like, I won't include all of it because that's kind of boring anyway for someone just listening on the outside. But there might be certain questions, in between that lead from one thing to another. And she was like, oh, share however much or whatever. Like, she was totally not scared or protective or trying to hoard her little bit of information. She was like, oh yeah, sure. Just whatever, all of it, whatever you think is going to be useful. And so that's the kind of people I love to have on my team. And that's one of the things I have enjoyed about the Akashic Records practice is that whenever you learn to read your own records, it's a matter of consistently asking questions to God, the source, universe, and writing down what comes through. And you realize that you're loved and that connection is there. And you don't have to go through somebody else. Sometimes it is really cool, though, to have those in-between sessions with someone else, when someone else can come in with a different set of strengths or talents and kind of come beside you and give you that extra that stamp, like, yes, you're on the right path. Well, I appreciate you being vulnerable and authentic to share your story. I don't know, it's like you were saying my story. It has been so much the same, including the alcohol and things like that. Just, I'd come home, go straight to, the alcohol bottles, pour myself. My favorite was Jack Daniels and some Dr. Pepper.
Oh, I was always Jack splash of Coke. That's interesting, but really anything, drink of choice was more. But I'm so happy to have that whole chapter behind me, hopefully, one day at a time. Of course, I just feel so blessed that I don't have to, ingest or be a different person other than I am every single day. I can just be me, high or low or what have you, or in between, just allowing the course of life to take its path. So
I listened to the Luke Storey podcast, the Lifestylist podcast, and he's been sober for, I think, 24 years now. He just reached some milestone. And but the thing is that looking back, he's thankful for alcohol and for the ability to numb, because he said that in a way it saved his life. And so I think, honestly, it served kind of like the same thing. It was a space holder for me. Yeah, to be able to numb out to the pain and what was going on, because I'm still here now, and I'm to a point where I don't feel the need to numb every day. So in a way, it could be looked at as evil or the devil, or you could also look at it as something that served a definitive purpose during that time. And so I kind of look at it that way as well now. But yeah, and then I did the TMS. I went and had that done, the stimulation, and that was really expensive, did not have insurance, and went through all of the sessions. At the end, still super depressed, and they were like, oh, wow, yes, you have treatment resistant depression. So, and they were like, just sign up for pay for another whole session. And I'm like, no, like because there's no guarantee. I've already spent all this money, got into debt, and no, I'm not going to go through all that just for, and in a way, it was just reinforcing the feeling that I was defective. Every time I would go sit in that chair, I would hear the click, 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 click of the magnets doing their thing, and nothing. It was just so crazy. But Yeah, so my life looks a lot different than it did even just, 2 years ago. So I'm really thankful for a lot of the tools that have come into my path and a lot of the people that I've since come to know. And, I started this podcast so that I can have great conversations because I am so much an introvert, and I don't know that people actually recognize that or can see that because you have a podcast where you're putting yourself out there, but at the same time it feels different because it's just me and you talking. And I just I feel like it gives me that permission to have these conversations, whereas I would feel really, I probably shouldn't, but I would feel like I was taking up someone's time, or let's just sit down and let's have a talk for an hour on this certain day. But if you make it into for a podcast, oh yeah, let's get it scheduled because it's a real thing and whatever. So I have loved what the podcast has made possible. It's really neat. You signed up for the 4-year Eden medicine program. Okay, so what got me cued in that something was different about Eden energy medicine, because there are so many modalities out there, and you don't even know until you get into a spiritual space. Like everyone has their own technique, and there's all these things, and you're like, okay, after a while, it kind of starts to seem like just the same reiteration of some of the basic principles, and people just put their spin on it, or they put their branding on it, and all of a sudden, ooh, they own a certain corner of the spiritual space, whatever. But what I got cued on that something was different is that they were talking about a point of, gosh,
The assemblage point. Is that
okay? I knew it started with an A. Yes, so an assemblage point.
Yes. That's one thing that we did learn in year 2. And you have to apply. Once you get through the first 2 years, you have to apply to be granted acceptance into the year programs. This is like an internationally known and recognized modality. And that's something that drew me to it. It had a lot of, I come from a very math and science oriented family. A lot of computer science in my family, a lot of coding and things like that. And so to have, an internationally recognized textbook with a preface by Carolyn Miss, who's, an internationally renowned medical intuitive, and just to have a lot of different people who I believe are very highly renowned in the field of medical intuition and energy medicine to really back this program is really why I went into it. And the assemblage point in particular is a point through which it's, kind of located maybe a couple feet in front of the body. And it's a point through which, it helps bring in a lot of different life experiences and kind of the lens through which you view your world. So over time, or after particular, so I can, just because of me, I'm not saying that in this class that everybody would leave being able to see the point. It's a very particular, it's almost kind of like a lens that you have to, I put on in order to kind of see where everyone's is. I want to make it very clear that I don't do that without permission from whoever it is I'm working with. I'm not just walking down the street like, ooh, what is that person's assemblage point looking like? It's almost like looking at somebody in their underwear, like how is that? I wouldn't do that. If I had x-ray vision, I wouldn't walk around taking x-rays of everybody, right? I just don't think that is ethical. And I used to, and I want to make that clear. I didn't know what the assemblage point was 6-7 years ago, but 6-7 years ago, I was absolutely doing that, mostly because I was so terrified that I was wrong or crazy. I didn't believe in my own gifts, and I didn't have an off switch, or didn't realize that an off switch was necessary. And it's not really necessarily off. It's just kind of like, I make it fuzzy. You know how we have backgrounds in Zoom meetings where you kind of make the background fuzzy? I do that on purpose just because it can be information overload sometimes. And my point is that the assemblage point is just that lens through which everybody looks at it. after a big event, big trauma, something like that, that assemblage point can shift. It's not located right in front of your sternum, about 2 feet out. It can kind of be lower or higher. Celebrities, for instance, theirs is traditionally higher, is how I've seen it, is how I perceive it, just higher. I'm not sure why. I don't know what it means. Celebrities have a higher one. And people who are very sad, or it sometimes can be lower, or the point itself looks deflated. Instead of like a marble, it looks just deflated to me. So traditionally, this isn't a point that you, as a practitioner, that I would engage with or try to help fix or move, or even sometimes it can shatter. And if it shatters, there's a lot of protocol surrounding this point, but traditionally it's not accessed in a first session. It's the relationship needs to be built between client and practitioner before going to this point, because it is such a profound, life-altering experience that the client needs to have built in, doing the homework or the energy protocols, really knowing their own internal body, so that way they can maintain the point in its, I don't want to say correct, but let's just use that word lightly here, the correct location for the client. If we were to just put the point back or what have you where it should, again, I'm using that S word very loosely, we just threw it back in the right spot, which we're not throwing it anywhere, but let's say we did that. The client could walk out of the door and it could be traumatic, like you said, with the other energy practitioner that you had worked with. It could be traumatic to the client to have such a profound alteration of perspective, and it most likely would not hold. So it's just interesting. And that point can also move on its own, by having a amazing spiritual experience, just awakening to, the majesticism, the spectacularness of the earth. It can change on its own. It doesn't need a practitioner's intervention. Sometimes it can be helpful to do that. But that's the assemblage point. And that's just one of many, many things that we've learned. That's not even its own energy system, although I think it could be treated as such. It is a very powerful point.
I don't want us to leave without having mentioned, you already referred to earlier in our conversation about the interviews that you're doing with practitioners. And I am so excited to announce that you are going to be putting these conversations together and publishing them, distributing them as a podcast. And I loved the name of the podcast that you've given it. Tell us what that is.
Sure, I'm calling it the Electric Love Podcast. And part of the reason for that is it's recording electrically what people love. And I do think that love is all there is. Ultimately, it's just different shades, So I just thought, why not take what people are already doing and really conveying that via a podcast? And so I've conducted a few interviews of different people. I've got, a Reiki specialist, somebody who does emotions code. I've got a lot of chiropractors lined up because there's so many different modalities within the chiropractic family. And I'm really into that central nervous system. I think it's the basis of all there is. And we'll see how it all unfolds. I'm really excited to also have Courtney on there. So more will be revealed, as I like to say. And yes, the Electric Love Podcast, and it should be available by in the next couple of months, really. So keep an eye out.
I liked the whole idea of an emotions code. Like that to me right there just sucked me in. I have to know more about emotions code. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I've already conducted the interview, so it'll be on there. And I also find that particular modality to be so fascinating. Happy to put you in touch with different practitioners. So it'll be a really fun learning experience for all of us. What I really am trying to embrace, and I think I've made that clear throughout even this time that we've had the opportunity to spend together, is just how necessary it is for clients to be empowered. And that's the type of practitioner that I want to interview. So that way, my hope is other clients or potential clients can hear about these modalities, and if they are so inspired to explore them for themselves, they have a great practitioner to start with, or they can ask that practitioner for a recommendation. But ultimately, to thine own self be true. I think the client knows best.
So Megan McQ. I love how you go by Megan McQ. It sounds so stylish, like a celebrity. McQ. I'm still trying to find my own nickname that will stick.
It really wasn't a nickname that I came up with. My last name is McQuiggan, Megan McQuiggan. But some of my friends in college were like, that's too long. We can't remember that. We're going to call you McQ. And so I didn't really get a decision there. But then everybody just started calling me McQ. And, Megan is a relatively common name. So there were maybe 3 or 4 Megans just in my friend group during college. So we all had our own little Megan symbolism, because if somebody said Megan, we'd all turn our heads. So it would just worked out best. And I just became known as Megan McQ, and that's what I go with. And it just makes it easy for everybody, I think. And it's fun. So it's joyful.
Well, how can people find out more about you and follow what you're making in your own sandbox?
Oh, I love that, Sandbox. That is what it is, isn't it? So I'm on Instagram, megan.mcq, and I'm going to be releasing more information there. And my website is www.meganmcq.com, and more information there. And I'm obviously available to anyone who'd like help. So I want to be a conduit and be of maximum service.
I love how in the Lifestylist podcast, Luke Storey ends his pods asking his guests this question, so I'm including it in mine. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings in your life that you might share with our audience that they could go research and also learn from?
I love that question too. I spent some time in meditation with this question, and ultimately, my most powerful teacher has been nature. And I'd like to tell you about this experience that I had shortly after my mother died. I ended up in Yellowstone National Park out in Wyoming. And I was there with kind of an aunt, let's call her. And we stopped at this place in Yellow National Park, and there was pine trees as far as the eye could see. And we were right in front of this beautiful, huge lake. And there were mountains, the biggest mountains I'd ever seen off into the distance. And as I just sat down, and I said in my heart to the pine trees, I said, I would like to bring you a peace offering for what man has done to you. Deforestation and burning of the trees and everything, making paper unnecessarily. And the trees replied, if you would like to bring us a peace offering, be peace itself. And I said, I can't be peace itself. My mom is dead. And they said, look at us. We go through our own phases of life, but we act as one. If you look over here, there was a terrible lightning storm, and this part of the forest is now the space where new trees can grow. It's becoming the fertile soil for which new pine to grow. And over here, we have a healthy, lush forest, housing lots of animals and creating its own ecosystem. But together we act as one. Be one among many. Be the one with others, right? And I just looked at this mountain and I sighed and I said, why does it feel like the whole world is on my shoulders, right? Like the pine wasn't listening to me. They were like, just be. And I was so angry. So I just turned to this mountain and I said, why does it feel like the world is on my shoulders? And the mountain replied, you're telling me, kid, because it was covered in snow. And it said, I have to trust that the sun, my God, will melt the snow in accordance with what is right. I couldn't shrug my shoulders today if I wanted to, but I trust that the sun knows my pain and my struggles and will relieve me as it sees fit. And I was just so blown away by the mountain having tons and tons of snow on it and not moving at all. And I just said, how can I tell the world of your majesticism, maybe your spectacularness? And the mountain replied, you already are. Be the mountain. And I just walked away from that experience and I I just asked the pine, I just said, pine, can you take my pain? And the pine is known for being very healing and a transmuter of dampness, and spiritually anyway. And the pine said that it has always taken all of my pain, whatever I was willing to give it. And, keep going, sapling. And I was just like, sapling? Like, look at that one. That one's brand new. And I was pointing to this little tiny tree in the distance, and it said, again, we operate as one. And I've always found that was, I believe, in my experience, the first time I communed with nature. But I've had other experiences since then where I've communed with nature, and I have found nature to be a powerful, perhaps the most powerful teacher of all. If I haven't made it clear, I believe that there is that still small voice within each of us where the authentic truth resides. And I feel that so long as we are willing to be quiet and sit with that truth, it will make all known. So I could, of course, mention the greats. I could tell you, go read Gandhi's autobiography. He's completely human and used to smoke and missed his father's death because he was making love to his wife. And he writes that in his autobiography. And while I find those Mother Teresa, while I find these people so amazing in their humanness, we are all human. And I believe in that spark of the divine within that can just nurture us and allow us to help one another become one.
Megan, I want to thank you so much for joining me in Scheffy's Sandbox. Much love to you, and I can't wait to see what happens next in your journey.
Thank you. It was great being here today.